Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Let's Taste with the Intrepid Wino. My name is James Scaresbrook and thank you for joining me. I am very excited to reacquaint myself with a producer on this edition. Pewsey Vale is a brand which is part of the Hill-Smith Family Vineyards portfolio, I guess you could call it. Based in the Eden Valley. It's a fairly historic producer and very famous for Riesling. Probably one of the most consistent producers of Riesling in Australia, and certainly one of the best, considered to be best producers of Riesling in the Eden Valley. If you're not familiar with the Eden Valley, it is the slightly more elevated, slightly cooler part of the Barossa region. You know, we're talking sort of up around Anguston, and you know, a lot of people might think Barossa, you know, isn't that a hot climate, a warm climate, you know, more red wines, that kind of thing. Yes, the Barossa Valley certainly is a lot warmer than the Eden Valley. So, you know, Eden Valley and Clare Valley are two of the most historic regions in Australia for the Riesling grape variety, Pewsey Vale being a very strong proponent of that grape variety. So these have been submitted by the lovely Pippa at Hill-Smith Family Vineyards, and I am absolutely thrilled to taste these because I always considered these to be, you know, like a lot of these classic Australian Riesling producers, to be grossly undervalued. They are really outstanding for the price, and you know, Riesling is still one of those varieties and wines that when people ask me, you know, what are there bargains? What's an absolute steal? Riesling, you know, and a lot of people who work in the wine industry would probably say the same. That Riesling is still considered to be, you know, one of the greatest wines. You know, it's not like, if you think about it, as far as the making of it, it's not that expensive. Most of the time, we're just pressing and then fermenting. There's no hand work. There's no barrel work. You know, it's all stainless steel typically, so it doesn't cost that much to produce. So I think, you know, you can get really excellent examples. So let's start with the Eden Valley Riesling 2006 vintage. Recommended retail price is $25. You know, one of the things that I love about really classic Australian Riesling is the exuberance of the aromatics. Lovely bright fruits. You know, a little bit of sort of lemon and lime, approaching more stone fruit, sort of nectarine, a little bit of apricot, definitely some white peach, a little bit of floral, some jasmine, but you know, lovely and fresh and inviting. You know, you're starting to move into some of these sort of sweeter spices as well. But just, you know, lovely and fresh and clean. So let's taste. A little bit shy at the moment. I think it is still very young, being from the 2016 vintage. It certainly has a steeliness to it. I think that the briskness, the acidity, but also the fact that it has, I'm assuming, solely been produced in stainless steel. It's giving it, you know, a little bit of a mineral kind of steely character. The fruits are, in my opinion, yet to really start to open up. I find that with this style of Riesling, you know, once summer kicks in proper, this wine will start to be really singing. It'll start to be opening up a lot more. At the moment, it's just a little bit shy, I think. And then typically, you know, you'd be able to put this kind of wine down and then open it up in maybe 5 to 10 years, and it'll start to have evolved, you know, a lot more tertiary characters. So not a bad start. You know, this is a really benchmark style of Riesling. So I think that this is, you know, if you wanted to cut your teeth, so to speak, and you know, certainly you're going to cut your teeth with the high levels of acidity here, this is not a bad place to start. So, you know, very strong. Now let's look at the contours Riesling, which typically is released after 5 years. It is I think it's a particular part of the vineyard. Let me see. Or maybe it's just, yeah, okay. From old vines, cool slope. Yeah, so it's deliberately released with a little bit of age to it. So I've always found the contours to be one of the great Rieslings, and for recommended retail of $36, it usually is going to be pretty good for the price. Just a slightly increased amount of colour here, still lovely and bright, yellow with a little bit of green, but there's a bit more density to it. So now we're starting to see some of the characteristics that Australian Riesling tends to pick up with a bit of bottle age. It is moving into slightly oilier territory, slightly riper, slightly bruised kind of fruits. Definitely that stone fruit starting to look, like some yellow apples here. But it's more about that kind of oily. Kerosene is a common descriptor for aged Riesling. It's definitely one that's used very commonly with Clare Valley Riesling. It's not quite in that really dense kind of oiliness, but you are seeing that time in bottle. Like I would assume that these probably would be bottled at the same time, but then this one is just left for 5 years before it's released. So you are getting to see an older vine Riesling, a little bit more quality here, but with the benefit of 5 years of age. So let's taste. A lot more expressive on the palate. Still, quite restrained on the front. The bottle characters of riper fruits, we're starting to see some dried fruit characters later on the palate. We're talking, some kumquats, definitely, apples, pears, the stone fruits, like riper apricots here, but not like sort of really sweet apricots. Like apricot is a very common descriptor I have for Viognier, but it's definitely not that kind of. We're talking like really small, slightly, very small apricots. Very good length. I think that the contours really is a type of Riesling that can stand the test of time, and you could age this for a good 10 to 15 years. If you look, I highly recommend. One of the things that I've been recommending a lot more in the last sort of 5 years is, if you can, take the opportunity to taste, to drink an older wine. A lot of people are interested to sort of know how long to keep certain wines, whether or not they should sell it. I highly recommend people taste older wines to see if they actually like them. I found that my palate is probably come back towards younger wines. Only certain wines I think I really enjoy with a lot of age. A lot of the time I do like them fresher and more exuberant, but if you want to get introduced to how a Riesling can look with a bit of bottle age, the contours I think is a good place to start. Maybe even get the Eden Valley right next to it and sort of compare and see maybe which one you prefer. Okay, and the third Riesling is the Pringer. Again, like the first one, 2016 vintage, recommended retail, pretty much the same, $26. But this is an off-dry Riesling, or a sort of, I don't like saying semi-sweet. A lot of people are put off by Riesling because they think it's going to be sweet. I think, off-dry Rieslings are, in countries like Germany, are absolutely awesome, but a lot of people got turned off by the sweetness. They want dry wines, but off-dry Riesling can be one of the greatest wines to pair with foods that are very challenging to match the right wines with. Foods that are a little bit spicier. Use a bit of chili, use some lemongrass. that kind of thing, particularly Asian, food, Chinese, Southeast Asian food. Off-dry Riesling is outstanding because it has good acidity, it's very fresh, but it has the, residual sugar, which, might be 20 to 50 grams, and it's going to temper those spicier, hotter characters in the food. So the Prima, basically, I would think they will stop the fermentation part of the way through, so that there will be some residual sugar and also some alcohol. So the alcohol percentage here is 9.5%, whereas the first two would be about 12.5%, 11.5 actually for the contours. Excuse me, and 12 for the Valley. Slightly more subdued, not quite as aromatic as the first Riesling. Showing a slightly riper profile, not quite as ripe as the contours, but definitely more like ripe green apples here. Some white blossoms as well. So it's certainly more floral than the first two. Let's taste. Very composed, very balanced. You don't really notice a lot of sweetness here. It's actually quite pleasant. Off-dry Rieslings, if they're taken a little bit too far with the sugar, it can sort of overwhelm everything. I think this is very, very, very well made. The acidity and the fruit and the sweetness are perfectly in balance here. That really is an outstanding example of an off-dry Riesling. I definitely recommend this one. I highly recommend people go out and see if they can get a bottle, especially for $26. It is really, really good for the price. Get acquainted or reacquainted with off-dry Rieslings, because I think if you're not incorporating that, if you eat a lot of Asian food and you're not incorporating off-dry Riesling into your wine match option, you are absolutely missing out, because I think there should be a lot more wine made like that for the growing Asian market. So Riesling, we are looking at really the three kind of more classic. I guess the other one would be much sweeter examples, but these are certainly three of the very, very serviceable, excellent styles of Riesling. So thank you very much to Pippa and Hill-Smith Family Vineyards for sending me these lovely samples from Pewsey Vale. Thank you guys for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to ask me any questions or make comments below. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button. Make sure that you are subscribed. Share the video if you can. And why not come visit me at intrepidwino.com. I'd love to hear from you. But until next time, cheers.